all I would say is that we've got to not trust the media stories when any of these, atrocities take place. You've got to really search out and seek out for yourself and not believe what, the mainstream media is telling you. You have to realize that this is a very ancient thing. It's very sophisticated, and that you'll have to realize that religion plays a key part, because it deals with the emotions of man, his irrational drives, and his needs. Man being raped on one side of what he really is spiritually, loss of center. So when you see these Sirhans, you see, and these Hinckleys, and these apparently lost souls, who are easily manipulated, you got to realize that that is the guy next door. This is pretty much walking around in the world. But the good thing about the modern age is that you have people like Ted Gunderson and John DeCamp, you see, and whistleblowers from within. Ted Gunderson, of course, was very senior in the FBI. John DeCamp was a senator. You have people from within the system now. You have, I can't remember his name, but in MASH, the show MASH, BJ Honeycutt, the guy, his name will come to me in a minute. He has made a personal investigation into child abuse and satanic circles. So you have famous actors, Lee Majors and Robert Mitchum have done movies on this. Certain Albert Finney with Looker. There's a lot of movies out there that have been covering this. Of course, The Manchurian Candidate immediately jumps to mind, with a fantastic film with who was in that? Was Frank Sinatra. Lots of elements there, and that is not fiction. That is absolutely true, with key words, key phrases. Mark Hinckley, isn't it a coincidence that Mark Hinckley and Chapman, both were reading Catcher in the Rye? So just even these small sort of anecdotal connections, and the way they do it is also very interesting. How the whole process of how an actual mind control slave is made runs along pretty typical lines. They have traditional ways of doing it. It's very much based on your own profile when they've been studying you independently without your knowledge. And also, of course, we find out that many of these individuals who've gone down that road, who've been so abused this way, were in fact involved with the corps, or the the United Nations, or the media, or the military. You cannot even document the cases of the people who've gone on to commit these crimes, including Oswald and Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, and other people. They've all had some sort of background in the military, or they've all worked for some sort of United Nations group, or military corps, or Peace Corps, or whatever. They've had some tie-in with some major orgs, and sometimes a lot more, sometimes full-blown, military intelligence kinds of organizations. And we even know that the conspiracy movement and the New Age movement is infiltrated by these people. There's all sorts of levels on this, all the way from the spiritual level, with religion affecting your mind and disempowering you in order to control every action, every thought you think, all the way down to this more street level, mind control, where kids are recruited from school because teachers who are in the pay of these think tanks observe the child, observe their spiritual tendencies, observe their introverted nature, because you'll always hear the same refrain. It's a very, very common refrain, which you pick up in Mark Hinckley, because he specifically was a virtuous man, actually, and his crimes were born out of a virtue that was manipulated. His virtue was to save the young from all the pestilence and evil that he saw that was rampant in the adult world. So the mind controllers would have picked up on this, and they would have looked at his profile and say, this man is kind of humanitarian, he's a bit of a loner. So he was a kind of a loner in school, yet as a loner he joined the military. Why would a loner, see, there's a contradiction right there, and they pick up on that. Why would a loner be joining something which is not only collectivized, it's highly collectivized, it's very regimented? So then they pick up conflict in his personality, and then he joins a collectivized kind of setup like the military, and then is still super introverted. His buddies will say, oh, we didn't go on with him, he never spoke, he was dead quiet. So you've got little contradictions there. Why would a man even like that be compelled to join something totally antithetical to his nature? Was he compelled to do that? Or was he trying to break out of his own personality mold and try to do that as a way to heal himself from what he thought was a malignancy of nature? Because if you're introverted and live in the West or live in America, they'll make you feel that you're malignant, all right. It's not that introversion is malignant, quite the contrary. As the psychologists know, it's the extrovert personality type that's the easiest hypnotized. Ha ha ha. the extrovert personality, you know, Mr. Sunshine, you know, the one season world, you know, getting gung-ho guy who's super successful, got everything that the material world can offer. He goes under in 2 seconds flat, but it's the introvert that you kind of, you know, manipulate. Well, so this is the, again, contradictions.
Who wants it? Congratulations, Richard. You had some very interesting scores on the first series of tests for Parallax.
Testing for what?
The Parallax Corporation. You did apply for our training, didn't you?
Oh, Christ, that.
As you know, Parallax receives demands from all phases of industry. Demands for unusual personnel. If you qualify, and we think that you can, we're prepared to offer you the most lucrative and rewarding work of your life.
Yeah, what do you get out of it?
We receive a sort of finder's fee. As I said, the jobs are difficult to fill. And your tests suggest that you have remarkable talents.
Yeah, what do you mean by talents?
You have difficulty holding on to a job, don't you?
I don't know, I just don't like to take a lot of shit so people say I got antisocial tendencies.
Right. Tell me, has it ever crossed your mind that maybe it's everybody else's problem that they don't get along with you?
Why?
Because you see, the very quality that gets you in trouble is what makes you potentially invaluable.
What's that?
Your aggressiveness.
Aggressiveness?
Right. I don't want to intrude on you while you're reading. But get in touch with me personally if you'd like to go further.
But the man is herded like an animal because that's another easy way to control his actions. And it just makes it a whole lot more difficult for the spiritual individual to stand alone, you know, the whole concept of the outsider. And can the outsider even take that type of ostracization and feeling of alienation, or can he learn to live with it as a necessary evil and then try to find a center in some way? But symbolism is used a lot, not only words and trigger words, but certain kinds of symbolism will be used. And I believe that these people, even when they approach priests, you know, maybe if they have some mental problems, what's your options? You know, nobody's going to understand you and your family are around you, so you're bound to have to go to a priest or some sort of psychologist, psychiatrist. And in my mind, you know, that's really could be potentially very dangerous, because I've got questions about who these people work for, you know, and what kind of allegiances they have, and how many strange deaths have taken place while you're in the custody of these men in white.
Why is Bayer Corporation the rat of the week?
Internal documents show that after this company positively, absolutely knew that they had a medication that was infected with the AIDS virus, they took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The medicine's called Factor 8. It was an injection medicine that was used for hemophiliacs, mostly children who'd been born with an incurable disease.
Hold on, Mike. So hold on. So you're telling me that Bayer knew that this drug was infected with the AIDS virus. They yanked it from the market in America, and then they dumped it in markets overseas?
They had to figure out a way, Joe, to make a profit on a product that they could not sell in America. So they made a huge profit. They dropped the product in Japan, Spain, and France.
Each year in the U.S., thousands of women learn they have cervical cancer. I could be one less.
One less statistic. One less.
Because now there's Gardasil, the only vaccine that may help protect you from the 4 types of human papillomavirus that may cause 70% of cervical cancer.
I want to be one less woman who will battle cervical cancer. One less.
Like all vaccines, Gardasil may not fully protect everyone. The side effects include pain, swelling, itching and redness at the injection site, fever, nausea, or dizziness.
Gardasil is not for women who are pregnant.
Gardasil does not prevent all types of cervical cancer, so it is important to continue with routine cervical cancer screening.
Gardasil will not treat cervical cancer.
Ask your doctor about getting vaccinated with the only cervical cancer vaccine, Gardasil.
Gardasil.
Gardasil. Gardasil.
With Gardasil, you could be one less.
O-A-E-S-S. I want to be one less. One less. O-A-E-L-E-S-S.
collapsed after being given the cervical cancer vaccine Gardasil. Health authorities are urging parents to stay calm, insisting the drug, which is being offered to students in WA, is safe.
Brooke Levi thought the Gardasil shot she had on Friday at Engadine High was going to protect her. But now she blames the cervical cancer vaccine for a bad reaction.
I want to pass out and just throw up and just go to sleep.
Brooke ended up at Sutherland Hospital. 2 weeks ago, Melbourne student Natasha D'Souza also felt unwell after being vaccinated.
I actually wasn't looking too good and I was looking a bit green in the face. And then I just basically collapsed about 5 minutes into class.
Natasha says her arms and legs were paralysed and she couldn't speak. She wasn't the only girl to have the jab, then fall sick.
Yeah, there were girls dropping like flies, basically.
Medical authorities have declared the reactions aren't linked to Gardasil. They've blamed fear of needles.
The after effects are very, very rarely serious, and the benefits of the vaccination are very, very important.
There's no reason to stop the vaccination program. The vaccines have been thoroughly tested both in Australia and overseas and have been found to be extraordinarily safe.
70,000 Gardasil vaccinations have been administered since the drug's approval last year. Full protection against the virus that causes cervical cancer requires follow-up shots, but many girls aren't keen to chance it.
I don't want to after going through this.
Damien Smith, 7 News.
Coming up in 7 News, a warning to diabetics about the deadly side effects of a popular medication.
So it's a terrible problem, terrible problem. And if people are not willing to go holistic and really have a holistic background, you could be jumping from the frying pan into the fire. When you try to approach some quote-unquote professionals that give you help, you might be going to the most psychotic people that ever lived. The very people who have caused you to be the way you are through their whole media manipulation and their whole infrastructure of society. Like, that goes back to the whole question of who is sane, what is sanity? Is there anybody sane in this world? The more you start to look at it, the more you start to realize, no, you're not. You're in some sort of hideous Planet of the Apes type experiment here. And man is a terribly, terribly disassociated and fragmented individual.
People come to me all the time asking me to medicate them. The implication behind that was that human beings, like all other animals, have a particular ideal model. It had a machine-like quality to it. We know what the model should be. And they ask of me to give them medications that would push them back to this particular model they have. An unrealistic model, but a very static model of man as machine.
What was happening was that large parts of normal human experience, grief, disappointment, loneliness, were all being reclassified as medical disorders. In the process, a new system of management was emerging. The drugs took away those complex and difficult feelings and made the individuals happier. But they also made them simpler beings, more easy to predict and manage, and closer to the machine-like creatures at the heart of the economic models.
By using checklists of symptoms about emotions, you have gone out and confused normal human responses to life with mental disorder, and therefore created an illusion of a vast epidemic. A medicalized illusion, and obviously a situation where you medicalize is a situation where your focus will not be on social change, it will be on controlling individuals to fit in properly. That's the subtle and overall danger here, that it could serve our kind of social economic systems needs in a way in which we become more efficient but less human.
I will never veer away from this whole concept of consciousness, the effects on consciousness. So it's really refreshing for me to read people like Jim Keith, and also even Alex Constantine to a certain degree, where he talked about his book Covert War Against Rock, amongst many others, is fantastic, because there's all sorts of little subsections of this mind control game. There's the cult of Dionysus, which is a very ancient cult that has specifically dealt with the concepts of the Solar King, involving a lot of alchemy. alchemical principles. Again, not as people would mostly understand that kind of study, but as I said, any study that is meant to be the uplift of your soul can also be used to drag you right down into a completely anti-human place. And the alchemical message of the 12 steps of the Sun King, like Hercules went through the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 trials, and Horus going through the 12 hours of night and the 12 hours of day. Well, you see, they also throw up people's champions who manifest these archetypes, because mythology is full of archetypes, and these mind manipulators and these people who are very familiar with the truth about mythology are able to manipulate stereotypical people, either people in their own bloodline, who then later put before you as, it's just the person next door, the Durans you see in The Cure, and Jim Morrison and all these people, and you don't know who in fact these people really are. Now, I got questions about a lot of these people in bands through their names, through the symbolism that they use. I mean, people have only got to go and pick up albums of the Lords of the New Church, you see, and certain bands, certain even personalities within the movie business. No, we accept you've got geniuses. We accept you've got phenomenal minds on the artistic level, the Werner Herzogs, the Alfred Hitchcock. We have no problem accepting that you've got exceptional minds of genius, but we can't understand that you have dark minds of genius in the same boat as well. Hell, man hasn't even got around to understanding that enemies in the world are created in exactly the way that allies are created. If a country approaches another country, or a government approaches another country government and says, we want to be allies, and then they shake hands and they have agreements, you've just created an ally. Well, then what is so unbelievably difficult for people to understand that the same action, similar action, causes political enemies to exist? You create your enemies. In fact, you might even have your own men in there, running the government in order to make these enemies. This is how this dialectic works. Now, in the field of pop music and rock and all of these things, I don't approach it from a Christian point of view, so I'm not going to sort of hammer these people just because they've seen wearing a pentagram one day, or they dress in black or something nonsensical, like a lot of the Christians, who try their best to critique this stuff. Unfortunately, they get way off, in my opinion, and basically it comes into hammering their own theories. You're going to have to be very impartial when you investigate occult matters. Christianity is an occult agenda which has been used by the mind controllers endlessly. Wasn't it Mark Hinckley or David Chapman was involved in some Christian network? I know he looked after children. He spent a lot of his time working in children's homes, in daycare and things like that. So these are virtuous Christian, soulful people who are not able to adjust to their society, and then were picked up or experimented on, or just asked to even do a simple questionnaire, just like the old Scientology gig. Well, we're doing a poll, we're doing a research, we're doing a survey. We got the 7-page, obligatory document we give out. You don't know where that document is going. You don't know where that is going to end up, or who's going to be studying it and going, interesting. Then they file them away and use them whenever they need it. This is exactly how it happens. You have to be very careful with all of this. Who knows where that gigantic Scientology, join-up sort of questionnaire thing is really going? And what computer is reading it to find out exactly who you are and whether you fit one of their mind control, schemata or not. And by the time you find out, it's too late. But these individuals often who are exceptionally gifted can also be used, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. And they are put before you, they're stereotypes, but they represent powerful archetypes. One of them being the Sun King, the Solar King, like Elvis Presley. And in fact, it's absolutely uncanny in the last concerts that Elvis did, where he almost verbally is talking in terms of solar symbolism. If you can decode what he was saying on stage at some of the last concerts that he did, it's absolutely remarkable how much solar symbolism he's using, unbeknownst to himself, which is again how the archetype works through the stereotype. And one of the key things is that when the Solar King is about to die or end his cycle, some of the mythologies, not all of them, but some traditions claim that the sun must die in water, in some kind of plunge bath or in some kind of lake. And if you open some very early, pictures of alchemy that are woodcuts. You can find these online. You will literally see that. You will see the king in his old age immersed in water. Now, where have we seen that before? You know, Jim Morrison, perhaps, Brian Jones. You know, there's a whole, even the concept of dying on your own vomit or dying in alcohol, you see in your lungs, is a water-based ritual type of thing going on here. So in the case of so many of these people, we need to look into some of the ritual elements of what was going on.
Of course, the Mafia had their hooks into the music business going back to the jukebox wars. And then in World War II, the OSS started up a program called Operation Underworld, which entailed the actual recruitment of key Mafia figures to operate in Italy and the United States. Right? And after World War II, they continued this brotherhood between the CIA and the Mafia that continues to the present day. Now, under Operation Chaos, I mentioned that all intelligence agencies have been brought into the umbrella program. Well, the Mafia was brought into it too because they were central to the music business itself, and they could be used to control and ultimately, in some cases, murder musicians who are outspoken in their opposition to the U.S. government. Jimi Hendrix was killed for two reasons. First of all, he had made statements in the teen press calling for the Black Panthers to go to Washington, D.C. and shoot the place up. Secondly, he had done a benefit for Bobby Seale and the Chicago 8. And that got the attention of the FBI and a program called COINTELPRO, which was a surveillance and assassination program. And it led to the murder of 28 Black Panthers. Tupac Shakur makes 29 because he was a Black Panther. Hendrix linked up with the Black Panthers, and for that reason, he was a dead man.